We welcome you today, and also all the ones of on EliyahuChannel.com. We appreciate you coming in and joining us this Shabbat. We love you and appreciate you. Please blog us. Please email us. We'd like to hear response, questions, or even input. Because we don't claim in Eagles Haven or any of our ministries to have everything in a box and have the full understanding. We all join together as a united fold of understanding that the Father's given us a piece of all information together to work together and get edified. And this Shabbat, we're about to share something powerful that would have an impact in your life. If you have no knowledge of it already, you will have a knowledge of it and see the book of Ma'ashi completely different. I remember one time at a prayer meeting, we went to a prayer meeting in the town of Banning. I was invited as a messianic minister. I do not claim to be a rabbi, because that word rabbi, or rabboni means great one, and great one does not mean ba'in or teacher. It's a complete different word. And it's a word of power and control. But we do claim in this congregation, as you watch the YouTube teaching concerning the qualifications of instructions for a leadership, that we do not add or take away from Scripture. So that means we do participate in the authority of the Torah and the right ruling of ordaining elders and ordaining shepherds and ordaining evangelists to be launched in the workforce of the servanthood of ministering the good news, the Besorah. I went to a meeting one time. I was invited to take my shofar and to pray. And as I was sitting there, they were talking before the prayer meeting, and one of the shepherds of the Assembly of God ministry was starting to make statements about the canon and the founding fathers. When I was listening to him, sitting there listening to him, I got so boiled and stirred. By the time he finished, I looked him in the eye and I said, "Those Catholic bishops and cardinals and popes are not my founding fathers. Those particular Orthodox and also Roman Apostolic Catholic priests are not my founding fathers. My founding fathers is in the book of the Tanakh, or it could be Kepha, or it could be Shaul, or it could be Ya'acob Yahushua, our Mashiach's brother. My Messiah is a Hebrew Messiah from the Middle East, and his name is Yahushua Mashiach Yahuwah. We do not claim the founding fathers of all those mystics and religious canon, so to say. So today I'm going to explain to you the distinct difference from the Yerushalayim Decree and the canon of the religiosity of the system of the catechetical type of leadership that this particular denominations of the Reformation and Christianity are actually under. The only difference, they're just different parishes of the Catholic Church with another name. But they're basically founded through the Catholic Church. And please don't get offended. Just watch the Scripture. Look at the Scriptures. Look them up. Confirm what I'm sharing with you. If you don't got time to do it today while you're watching live, take it later on YouTube and study it. Take the verses. Take notes. So I'm going to explain to you that the canon is a Catholic terminology. The ambassadors in the Scripture, or the Shiliach, they call apostolico. I don't use that Latin word. I'd rather use Shiliach, or the ambassadors of the Mashiach. It's called the Yerushalayim Decree, proclamation, declaration, and a written decree that was distributed throughout the book of Ma'ashi wherever they went, bringing in a right ruling understanding. The word canon is a noun. It comes from the ecclesiastical rule of canon. It is the law enacted by a council of the body rule of principal standards in the Old English canon with a K, not a C. Measuring rod for a reed or a cane. The year 900 in Latin was canonicus in the Latin language. So canon is basically a Latin word, but it comes from the Greek word with a K. Just take the C out, put a K, now you got the Greek instead of the Roman Latin. And it basically means they get a cane stick that's real straight, and they take their cane stick to somebody that has the master cane, and then they mark it, and now they go home with a ruler. And that's their right rule. That's the way they made rulers back then. Okay? And they used the cane stick. Also, they in the goddess of faith, Faith, she has a magic wand that's a cane stick like the word Hollywood, that she waves and throws all these mystical istaras, little stars to make people under a spell to believe the preachers without searching the scriptures to study to show themselves approved, a workman rightly dividing the word of truth. So, in the Roman Catholic Church, or the Circe, they have the canonicos. The authority rule of the scriptures, though, is the practice of Emunah, belief, trust, and understanding from the right ruling by studying and showing themselves approved and reading the word. The illiterate people will learn how to read. Most Yehudim or Israelites do not have illiteracy in their home. Not like the Goy or the Gentiles that the Catholics call. I use the word Goy or Goyim, ethnic background other than a Yehudi or a sojourner, Yerushalayim Israelite. Okay? So, they practice literacy. They teach them how to read and write, and they practice and they learn the prayers, the children of the House of Yisra'el. They're different than what you call the paganistic societies that like to dominate the people by the higher educated. But in the House of Israel, in the right ruling of the scriptures of the first covenant, it's exercised and told that they must teach their children the Torah and the Tanakh, and they must learn how to read it and understand it themselves. So with that basic understanding that our founding fathers is based on a Middle Eastern Hebrew Messiah. He's not a Greek-looking Messiah. He's not this Catholic-looking Messiah. He's not a 1940 painting from an artist that passed around during World War II that most Christian and even the other denominations use as an image of this false deity or false image of Yahushua. But it's the image of the Isus or Isus. It is not the true image of the Hebrew Messiah. It is a false image. I call it the image of the beast. Okay? So, don't be offended when I'm sharing. These are all factual information. I want you to go with me to Ma'ashi chapter 15 now. And coming to this understanding. Well, how did that shepherd respond when I told him my Messiah is a Hebrew Messiah? I don't follow the canon of the Catholic Church. I follow the canon of the Torah and the Tanakh and the names that are written in here and the Jerusalem Decree. He sat quiet with all his assembly school knowledge. What we have today, we have a cookie dough punch system. Years ago, they used to go to Bible schools or Bible colleges that were universal and used to learn a whole variety of information. Most of that, I tore up the certificates and threw it away, but I used that as knowledge to minister to my friends that are still caught up in the Christian community. But today, it's all changed. It went from creating denominational Bible schools to cookie dough and push out their own commentary, particular pastors or leadership, to cookie dough them out and push them out. Now it's got to the point that some pastors are ordaining their family and their children, and they're not even sending them to schools or giving them books to study and research. In some ways, if they're coming into the knowledge of the House of Yisra'el, that's good, because they're not contaminated with a bunch of rubbish and preconceived doctrines of men, which I call doctrines of demons. Okay? So, but in other ways, in the Christian community, they're not getting the full understanding of the right ruling of how the precept or the order of protocol is to run the congregations. So that's why we have all forms of perversion in the churchy temples. Okay, I call them Circe temples. They call them churches. But the word is Ekklesia. Okay? And so, and a lot of times, we don't have no understanding that when we walk into their buildings and they got their steeples or they got cornerstones, it's been dedicated to Baal, the Lord deity. It has not been dedicated to Yahuwah. It says in the scriptures, wherever his name is at the post of the door in the building, he will be there by the Ruha. So what is the parallel truth? If they're operating on the Holy Spiritu and they have a different name at the door, that spirit will be in the building, dominating by protocol of the dedication of the cornerstone of the building structure. So we as messengers of Yahuwah going in, out, and trying to find the lost house of Israel. My mission in this ministry is to find the house of Israel, the Goyim that have been scattered, and they're laid captive in these pagan Circe buildings, and they're held in bars of all kinds of protocol of men, following thousands and hundreds of different precept laws. They won't obey the 10-word covenant of Yahuwah, of love, the loving covenant, but they'll obey. To be an assembly of God, you got to have 2,000 bylaw principles. You have to check out the boxes. To be a Southern Baptist, there's hundreds and hundreds of things you got to check out. I think the 10-word covenant is a little bit better, full with love coming from the Father, than a man-made precept directions of how to obey and follow their particular system of the God they trust on a dollar bill. Go with me now to 15 Ma'ashiv, Acts chapter 15, verse 6. Oh, I tremble as I prepare myself to share this message with you today. I share it with you today not as a person that knows all the information. I don't have it in a hat. I can just punch in, enter in my computer, in my brain, and pull it out. I'm always learning like a sponge. I am a learner. I am a disciple. I am teachable and correctable. And I find it an honor to be able to share with you today, not with a mind of being puffed up, but that I have to be cautious that with everything I share with you, I don't add or take away from Scriptures. That's the difference from Christianity and religion. They get dogmatic and they just utter what they want. They add and take away. They add and take away. But for us in the house of Israel and the followers of Yahuwah, we're very cautious of what we say. And if we have to correct ourselves and even make an announcement of correction, we will do that to stay in order and humble and reverent before our Creator, Yahuwah, and our Mashiach, Yahushua, our Mashiach. Now let's go to verse 6 and begin. Let's start at verse 5. And some of the believers who belonged to the sect of the Pharisees rose up, saying, it is necessary to circumcise them and to command them to keep the Torah of Moshah. This is the written Torah. Whenever you see the Torah of Moshah, or what is written in Moshah, this is what you call the written Torah. And in these, as I read, you're going to see the distinct difference of the Oral Torah, Talmud, Babylon, and the written Torah. And you must understand the difference to understand the Pauline writings that is infiltrated in the Reformational Bibles. And it says here in verse 6, and the ambassadors or emissaries and elders came together to look into this matter. So they had a general meeting, because there was a group of the Pharisees that believed in the Mashiach. They believed that he is Yahuwah. They believed that he is the Hebrew Messiah appointed for them to be fulfilled in the manuscripts. So they were a part of it. Some of these Pharisees were Nazirs. They called Nazarenes. Okay, because there was actually 7 sects in our King James scriptures sharing you 7 sects, not just Pharisees and Sadducees. There's actually 7 different ones. And one of them, our Messiah claimed, he claimed to be a Nazarene or a Nazir, a watchman of the Word. So as we continue to read, we're going to see what the watchmen of the Word did as they came together to look into this matter. They had a council meeting. They came together. They came to share the Word, talk, communicate, and we're going to make a decree. We're going to settle this issue once and for all. We don't want no agents of the enemy to bring a religious spirit into the congregations of the called out ones. Okay? So they want to fix it right away. And when there had been much dispute, Kepha rose up and said to them, this reminds me that when I'm sitting there watching some of my Christian friends, when I'm trying to minister to the pastors and leaders of my old friends that I associate, and I see them talking, I sit there quiet, and I get stirred, and I get the notes ready. And when they're done, I say, you guys done? Let me give you the word now. And I stand up and hit them. And this is what Kepha did too. He says, rose up and said to them, men, brethren, you know that a good while ago Aloha Elohim chose among us, that by my mouth the Goy, the nations, should hear the word of the Besorah, the good tidings, or good news in English, and believe. And Elohim, who knows the hearts, bore witness to them by giving them the Kodeshim Ruha, the Kodesh Ruha, as also to us, and made no distinction between us and them, cleansing their hearts by belief. Now then, why do you try, Elohim, by putting a yoke on the neck of the taught ones, which neither our fathers nor we were able to bear? But through the unconditional favor of the Yahushua Mashiach, we trust to be saved in the same way as they. And all the crowd was silent and were listening to Barnabas and Shaul, declaring how much miracles and wonders Elohim did among the Goy, or the Goyim, the sojourners, through them. And after they were silent, Ya'acob, this is Ya'acob, this is our Mashiach's brother, they waited for him to come in too. And he answered and said, Men, brethren, listen to me. Simon has declared how Elohim first visited the Goy and the Goyim to take out of them a people for his Shem, for the character of his name, to separate and bring out a people for his name. And the words of the Navi'im agree with this, as it has been written. Now he's going to quote in Amos 9:11 through 12. After this I shall return and rebuild the booth of David, which has fallen down, and I shall rebuild its ruins, and I shall set it up, so that the raiment of mankind shall see Yahuwah, even all the Goyim on whom my name has been called, says Yahuwah, who is doing all this, who has made this known from of old. This is a quotation from Amos chapter 9 verse 11. He said that there is a raiment of mankind out there, of the ethnic groups, shall seek Yahuwah, even all the Goyim, the sojourners, on whom my Shem, my name, has been called, says Yahuwah, who is doing all this, who has made this known from of old. So this is a fulfillment of the scriptures. Even today, as I go places, I'm searching for the House of Yisra'el. I'm searching for the Goyim, the sojourners. The Goyim are trapped in all these pagan religious places, and they're under the subjection of precept man-made laws, and they feel good religiously, but they have no freedom in the Torah, in the Tanakh. So come to an understanding that just because there's a big congregation of people, not all have his Shem and his character and his name. There is people that are in the Christian community have the character of his name. They just don't know his name yet. But when they hear his name, they come out right away, because there's a quickening in their DNA of who they are in the house of Israel. When we heard the name, we were quickened. Whoa, what is this? And we study the scriptures and we see, to show ourselves approved, that that is his name, Yahushua. And we're quickened in our DNA. There's no rejection. There's no denial. It's all of a sudden we're dreaming and seeing the Hebrew letters. We're seeing everything about his name, because in our DNA flows the power of his character, Shem. Because we were a peculiar people, even as we were Christians in the Eagles Haven ministry. We were always on our face crying out, we want more of you. We want more of you. Send us your Ruach. Fill us with your Ruach. Fill us with a double dose. Show us the truth. We were not settled in the information that was given to us. We wanted him and more of him and all of him. And he said, well, here's my son, and his name is Yahushua. Start changing things if you really want more of me. Many people in these congregations have an opportunity when people give them the true name, and they deny it because they're stuck in a system, and they rejected the true name of Abba, Yahuwah, and Yahushua HaMashiach. So we must come to an understanding that there's people out there that are trapped, that the mark of his character, of his name, is on them. They're scattered, but they're the house of Israel. And then there's going to be some Goy ethnic backgrounds that don't have no blood, they're searching and seeking out, and they're going to be grafted in to the house of Yisra'el as well. Somebody say with me, hallelujah. And let's go to 19. Therefore I judge that we should not trouble those from among the Goyim who are turning to Eloah or Elohim, but that the right to them to abstain from, number one, here's what they said. We don't want them to be caught up in the Talmud oral information. We're going to just give them what's written in Moshah of the Tanakh, of the Torah. Okay? And he says, but that we write to them to abstain from defilement of idols. Everything with idols. That's why my wife and I, because we're worshipers, and this ministry is worshiping ministry even when we were in the Christian community, I made a covenant that I cannot go into a building that are worshiping the pagan deities, because all truth is parallel. It says that He inhabits the praises of His people, Yisra'el. He inhabits the praises of His people, Yisra'el. Now, if somebody is worshiping the goddess glory, the goddess grace, the goddess mercy, or the king of the goddess Gloria, which there's a song about that, doesn't even have the Jane man's name, they are actually summoning the spirits to inhabit the praises of their people of that denomination of religion. All truth is parallel in the Word. So if all truth is parallel in the Word, then if we're worshiping Him in the true words and the true knowledge and understanding, and we're crying out, He's going to inhabit the praises of His people. Inhabit is also a word used for enthrone you with His presence of His Ruach. And so when we're involved in participating in those things, if some of you by stream are watching and you're still going into those places and worshiping with them, then you are participating in the inhabitants of the presence of those pagan spirits or spiritus of that particular deity. You got to realize the principalities and the powers of the air are really in operation and keeping people in bondage. That's their job, to keep them distracted with religion. Satan is a strong religious spirit in his particular style of controlling people. If they're not worshiping him, he don't care, as long as they're in bondage to some form of a wrong direction of a religious spirit. Okay? So he inhabits the praises of his people. So we have to abstain from idols. That's a big, broad word. You go into the Leviticus, you go to the right ruling, and you can see the order how to abstain from idols. It's everything from your mind, your eyes, your hands, creative things, all details of a right ruling, how to stay away from idol worship. There's idle words. A lot of us have idle words in our conversation. We have mixture of idols in our conversation. We call it idle words. Let's keep reading. That's number one. Say with me, you watching in the audience on the stream. Number one decree. The second decree, and from whoring. Well, we know what that is off the top. There's whoremongers, there's men that are whores, as well as female whoring of all kinds of forms of lust. But they can also be whoring and selling yourself short to all things in the world. So there's a broad area in the book of the right ruling in the scriptures about the word whoring, to abstain from all things of whoring. Some people go to jobs so desperate they refuse to find a job that gives them freedom, the freedom in order to enjoy their own Shabbat. And this, because there's big pay, they go ahead and do it anyways. So they're whoring, they're selling themselves short, and they're selling their belief of Emunah short, and they're compromising and being double-minded. So there's a strict rule of understanding. To be free in the Torah, you have to be obedient in the marriage covenant. You see, we're married in a marriage covenant. A husband and a wife have a right ruling agreement together. So we have an agreement in a living relationship. It's not a, well, I'll see you once a week relationship. It is an everyday, 24 hours, 7 day a week relationship in the right ruling of the Torah. Okay? So that's number two. Let's look at number three. And from what is strangled. So number three is strangled. And there's a right ruling on every detail of what's strangled. And if you look at most restaurants and most places they go, you can choose kosher food if you ask them. Some restaurants you can actually ask them for a kosher menu, and they butcher the animal correctly without being particularly butchered, that they strangle and keep most of the blood in order to keep the meat fat and juicy and plumpy. And people still go to restaurants and they're believers and they're eating blood with their steaks. They're eating blood with their food because they're not properly being prepared and understanding this. So they're part of a paganistic, not having the true understanding of the right ruling. They're participating on eating foods of strangulation or a certain type of butchering. In the scripture, in Leviticus, it gives you a right ruling. In Jerusalem, every restaurant that's Kodesh or that's assigned to Jerusalem has to have a particular rabbi that's a lawyer, a doctor, and a chemist. That's what he went to his particular shiva or school to learn as a rabbi. He's a doctor, he's a lawyer, and a chemist of foods. So he makes sure that everything's clean in that restaurant. And they got certain stars to let the people know the level of cleanliness in all their products. So they're being gatekeepers. They're being watchmen as chemists in these restaurants. So when you go into the restaurant, you are totally clean conscious that the food, the type of, I used to like the falafel goat sandwiches they make, right? And they got the stars on them of the cleanness of that particular butchering and preparing, even the oils and everything about it. And then you have confidence that you give thanks for the kosher food because it is set apart by the word of the Torah that it is clean. Okay? So there's a proper, in Israel you can have a clean conscience. If you go to certain places in California, they might have a kosher restaurants, but they might not be 100%. You have to be sharp and alert about it because some of the little spices and ketchups and other little things can have some unkosher ingredients in it. Okay? And from blood. Everything with blood. Leviticus 3:17. So everything with the blood that is taken in. There's all kinds of rituals in the pagan world or the ethnic backgrounds of the nations where they cook the blood or they cook the meats with still medium or rare or medium rare instead of well done and cooking it and getting all the blood out of it. But that doesn't mean that the meat was even prepared right in the proper butchering. So these are the conditions, but here's number 5. Here's condition 5. Say with me, that was 4. Now here's condition 5, verse 21. And from ancient generations, Moshe has in every city, thus proclaiming him, being read in the congregation or the synagogue or the Ekklesias every Shabbat. So the 5th regulation is, and to continue to read the book of Torah, the written word of the following the right ruling of Torah, and what was proclaimed of the prophecies of the Hebrew Messiah Yahushua, and also all the right ruling in the Tanakh and the Torah. So it's been read, it's being read. That's part of the proclamation of the Jerusalem Decree. What happens when you read the Torah and the Tanakh? You learn the right ruling. Your children learn the right ruling. So these 5 things become a basic understanding that was fundamentally already being done by the House of Israel. Fundamentally being done by the converts of the Goyim that we call Nazirs. Nazir is the Hebrew word for Nazoraim, of the Greek word of the Nazarites. Okay, the watchmen of the word. They already knew, they had a knowledge. It is us in our time period that if we lost this information because our forefathers have inherited lies and false information in these Bible schools. False information passed down. They're not properly teaching the right ruling of house cleansing or food preparation or all the other things of the right rule of clothing. All the things that we find out today, we found out that wool and linen, as well as cotton, but wool and linen is the best protection from solar radiation. It's the best protection from dirty electricity. Wool and linen. But it's in the Word. Cotton's okay, but wool and linen will protect you. Okay? So there's a right ruling. The Father already knew how to protect us, not just from our food, our drink, our minds, but even in our clothing, to protect us and entirely to watch over us, that we can live a jubilant walk with Him and enjoy a long time on this earth with our children and great-grandchildren and children. Okay? Let's go now, continuing. Then it seemed good to the emissaries, the ambassadors, and elders with all the assembly to send chosen men from among them to Antioch. And Shaul and Barnabas, Yehuda, being called Barsaba, or son of Saba, and Silas, leading them among the brethren, having written by their hand this, that the ambassadors and the elders and the brothers, to the brothers, they wrote it with their hand, they signed it, they co-signed it, they declared a decree, a proclamation. Now look at this. To the brothers who are of the Goyim, the sojourners in Antioch, Syria, Ekklesia, greetings. Says, we have heard that some who went out from us have troubled you with words, unsettling your lives or beings, to whom we gave no command. It seemed good to us, having become of one mind, to send chosen men to you, with our beloved Barnabas and Shaul, men who have given up their beings, or Hayim in Hebrew, for the Shem of Yahushua Mashiach, who have therefore sent Yehuda and Silas, who are also confirming this by the word of mouth. And for it seemed good to the Kodeshim Ruha, or the Kodesh Ruha, and to us to lay upon you no greater burden than these necessary. You see, a lot of the Pharisees and Sadducees and the doctors and lawyers were being converted to Yahushua, the Hebrew Messiah. Some of them still had some of the Talmud, Babylon, oral law, the attachment of what we call today commentary, denomination commentary knowledge. I went into a Bible store and I went to look for a King James or King James Bible. And I asked the clerk, where's your King James? And she looked at me puzzled. She says, well, what kind? Well, Old King James, New King James. She says, well, what kind? Well, what do you mean? She says, well, we have King James for Baptists, we have King James for Foursquare, we have King James for Assembly, we have King James for Church of God in the Cristo, we have King James for everybody. I said, that's right. You have commentaries of their oral Talmud, of their own form of Christianity, oral laws, preconceived doctrines of men. And when you open them up, half the scriptures is commentary and the other half is the word. So what can you get out of that? So I told her, I just want a plain King James, Thomas Chain reference, preferably with good footnotes and dictionary and a concordance. Oh, those are right there, an aisle number, blah, blah, blah. So it shows the distinct difference that there's Talmud oral commentary has been spreading in Christianity and oozing with the poison of man-made oral information. And some of it is good historically, some is good documents. Some of the stuff I learned here is the true name. In my King James, I found the true name Yahushua and how to find the Hebrew numbers from the Greek to the Hebrew. Some of the information is in some of those scriptures, but not all is accordingly true. Okay? But people take it just because it's in their book, like it's something stamped and sealed by the Creator Himself for their denomination. Okay? So let's look at verse 29. That you abstain from... So this is what they made an agreement. Now they're confirming the agreement with a second witness in the same chapter. And that what was written in the scriptures. That you abstain from what is offered to idols and blood and what is strangled and whoring. If you keep yourself from these, you should do well, be strong. And they already know the fifth one. Everybody knew the fifth one. To read the Torah. To come together in the synagogues, the Ekklesias, and teach in the Shabbat. That was common sense already back then. There was no question about it. It's like a guy waking up in the morning and he knows he's a man. He's a guy. It's duh. You know what I mean? He knows he's a guy. All right. So, let's look at verse 31. And having read it, 30. And they therefore being sent off went to Antioch, having gathered the crowd together, they deliver the letter. So they're making copies of letters, they're delivering the letters to all the locations. And having read it, they rejoiced over its encouragement. And Yehuda and Silas, being themselves also Naviim, encouraged the brothers with many words and strengthening them. And having spent some time, they were sent back in shalom from their brothers to the ambassadors. But it seemed Tob in Silas to remain, and Shaul and Barnabas, Bar, son of Nabha, continue in Antioch, teaching and bringing with many others also the Besorah, the good tidings, and the word of Yahuwah. And after some days Shaul said to Barnabas, let us now go back and visit our brethren in every city where we proclaim the word of Yahuwah and see how they are. So they went in a circuit, not a circus, they went in a circuit and they made their route of all the synagogues that were teaching the Torah, the called out ones that were converted in the Ekklesia understanding of the Hebrew Messiah. I'm sure some of them they were not invited at, as we know in the scriptures, but most of them they were invited. One thing about I learned in living in Israel, that a lot of the Jews like a good dispute and argument. They'll spend all day Shabbat having fun, and it looks like they're angry and arguing, but they're actually just having fun studying the Word together. Okay? Or even like my wife, she used to say, when we used to have midrash here, and she, man, quiet guys, you're arguing. No, we're not. We're having fun, right? And then when I get to Israel, she says, I know why you act that way. All the Hebrew Jewish Israelites act that way. They have the same character, you know. They get loud, they stand up, they sit down, they show the scripture, they have fun. Of course, it's not fun when they get into blows, but I've never seen that in Israel. They just have fun in studying the Word. Okay, let's go to Malachi 16, verse 4. We're going to skip. You're going to have to read it from here on yourself. And as they went through the cities, they delivered to them the regulations to keep. Which regulations? The Jerusalem Decree, the proclamations, the understanding of the right ruling of the Torah. That's all it is. They were just rehearsing and making sure they don't get caught up with the commentary knowledge of the Babylon, Oral Talmud. Remember that. There's a Babylon Oral Talmud, and then there's the Jerusalem Talmud. It's more recent. And you couldn't line up this wall of all their books. They start at 14, they might end at 50 and 60 years old and be a rabbi. I mean, there's so much man-made stuff. I just like my one Torah Tanakh book, the Brit Hadasha, and follow the right ruling, what's written in the book of Moshah, what's written in Moshah. Okay? In verse, and he says in verse 4, and as they went into the cities and delivered to the regulations to keep, and were decided by the ambassadors and elders in Jerusalem. It was decided by the ambassadors and the elders in Jerusalem. It was a declaration, it was decreed forever to be kept. And there's people adding and taking away today. They won't ordain elders or have shepherds or evangelists in their group because they think, oh, we don't do that. That's Christian. No, it ain't. That's Jewish. That's Israelite. That's ancient Torah to have elders and leadership of positions. They were. Who do you think Yeshayahu was? Who do you think Ezekiel was? They were evangelists, preachers of the glad tidings. It says in the Word, in Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu, that they said here, I come to bring Besorah. He said it in the first covenant. Besorah, good tidings. I come to bring good tidings to you. And in the future, Messiah is going to come with his good tidings to fulfill these words I speak. So good tidings and an evangelist, even though it's a Greek word, was used as a preacher of the Besorah even in the first covenant. So everything that they're proclaiming and declaring, we can't add, we can't diminish, we can't take away. Then indeed the assemblies were strengthened in the belief and increased in number every day. It was settled. We're not going to go with the Babylon Talmud oral commentary. we're going to settle with just written by Moshe. And we're going to keep these particular 5 principles that have a lot of right ruling around the 5. Let's see, all the way to 7. And having passed through Pergia and the Galatian country, they were forbidden by the Kodesh Ruha to speak the word in Asia. Then they came to Mysia, and they tried to go to Bithynia, but the Ruha did not allow them. Okay? Now let's go to, they continued in the Jerusalem Decree, and let's go to chapter 17, verse 1. And having passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a congregation of Yehudim. It was a synagogue, Ekklesia, all right, of Yehudim. And according to his practice, Shaul, what? According to who? According to his practice, he went unto them for 3 Shabbats, for reasoning with them from the scriptures, the Torah, explaining and pointing out the Mashiach had to suffer and rise again from the dead, and saying, this is Mashiach, Yahushua, whom I proclaim to you. And some of them did believe, and a large number of the worshiping Greeks, and not a few of leading women, joined Shaul and Silas. So in this synagogue, it was an Ekklesia, a called out one synagogue. Okay? They were assembled in the Shabbat. There was Greeks in there. They can even be uncircumcised and be in a synagogue. They just can't go to a temple, or the Hekel, of the Kodesh Hekel in Jerusalem. But they can come and listen in a synagogue. Women will sit in one area, men will sit here. They can have Persian there. They can have people from different ethnic backgrounds that are Goyim coming out, or they're seeking the Shem, the name of Yahuwah. They can come to the synagogues with the rest of the Jews and the Israelites. So they were sitting there. And when they heard this told good glad tidings, they were excited. Because if I was a Greek, and I look at the Talmud, Oral Babylon Law, I said, man, I would enter that pretty slow. But if I found out the told news that I can follow what's written by Moshe and don't have to go with all that other stuff, of thousands of stuff, I'll be excited too as a Greek ethnic background. And some of them were half-breeds. Okay? So, and some of them did believe, and a large number of the worshiping Greeks, and not a few, of the leading women joined Shaul and Silas. But the Yehudim who did not believe, having become envious, took some of the wicked men from the marketplace, and gathering a mob, set all the city in uproar, and came upon the house of Jason, where seeking to bring them out to the people. In other words, they left the synagogue, they went to Jason's house, and they went to stir up problems. Look at verse 10. And the brothers immediately sent Shaul and Silas away by night to Borgia, or Borgia, in some translations, or Borga, having come, went into the congregation of the Yehudim. Here's another congregation of the Yehudim that had people of other nationalities there seeking the Shem of Yahushua. Now, there were more noble than those of Thessalonica, who received the word with great eagerness and searched the scriptures daily if these words were so. Then many of them truly believed, and also not a few of the Greeks, descent women as well as men. And when the Yehudim from Thessalonica came to know that the word of Elohim was proclaimed by Shaul at Besorah, they came there also and stirred up the crowds. These are the Babylon Talmud Pharisees. They want to get people involved. Even when I was in Jerusalem, some of them were trying to tear me and pull me in to their little crowd of the Babylon Talmud system of sect of their denomination, if you want to call it, in the English understanding of their sect belief system. There's actually several different, probably 5 or 6, maybe more, of different belief systems of the Babylon Talmud. There's also the followers that are following the mystics of all forms of magic and stuff from the Talmud, a different type of book of Talmud. So there's a whole bunch of sects, even Jerusalem today, that are involved with occultic practices and that are all not kosher teachings. Okay? So, they found out, they were jealous and envy, they believed in Yahushua, but they want to keep him under bondage under the Oral Talmud law. Let me explain something to you. In the written Torah of Moshah, in Leviticus, in the scriptures, it says the covenant of promises, how to come under the blood to get forgiveness of sins. That the only time they need to be circumcised is for the purpose when they come to full understanding that they want to go into the hekel. That was the conditions of going to the hekel. But if they never come into the hekel and they just believe in the sham and the name, there wasn't no, religious law or condition if they were visiting synagogues and learning the Torah. They could learn the name of the Torah. They could come to people's house. They didn't have to be circumcised to get in there. But these particular Pharisees were creating a particular add-on precept Talmud oral law from certain rabbis from Babylon saying everybody has to be under the covenant of Abraham right off the top. Instead of letting them want to do it willfully, honorably, earnestly, not forcefully, religiously. Okay? So, let's go to chapter 21 of Ma'ashi now. We're getting ready to wrap it up. Ma'ashi chapter 21. You and Ustream and YouTube say with me, the Yerushalayim Decree, the written proclamation, declaration, decree that we cannot add or take away. Forget canon. Forget the canonicos Catholic understanding of all their thousands and thousands of precept laws in the Catholic Church, their canon, and their people that were completely off worshiping a different Greek or Latin Messiah. We come to introduce you to the Hebrew Messiah. And the Hebrew Messiah, Yahushua, Mashiach, is the one that came to this earth, that died on that stake, on that mountain of Skull Mountain, and his blood was shed, and he stabbed the head of Goliath, because that's where David buried his head, on Mount Golgotha. He buried his skull to destroy the DNA of the Nephilim, and his blood to go down to the secret chambers, crack way deep, where the true Ark of the Covenant is still hidden underneath those chambers. His blood was put on the horn of the altar. He completely fulfilled everything, and he's a Hebrew Messiah. He's not some Greek-looking guy with a halo. He's not some guy with some robes of clothes made from polyester. You know what I mean? He's the one that came as a Hebrew Messiah. He walked among us, and he's calling out his people, Yisra'el. He's calling out the sojourners and the people that hear his Shem of the Abba, of Avinu, our Father, and to be wooed to him in love, to come out from those pagan places. Chapter 21, verse 25. And it's written, take them and be cleansed with them, and pay their expense, so that what they have been informed about you is not so, but that you yourself also walk orderly, keeping the Torah. So they wanted him. This is another sermon, because this particular few verses starting from 18 on show the distinct difference of written Mosheh Torah and the oral Talmud. Okay? But I just read that a little bit for you can do your homework later. Verse 25. But concerning the Goyim, the sojourners, they call nations, or the Catholic word Gentile, who believe, we have written and decided, and they should keep themselves from what is offered to idols, blood, what is strangling, and whoring. Okay, they wrote it a little different from the written one, but they were just paraphrasing it. And Shaul took the men on the next day and having been cleansed with them, went into the Kodesh place to announce the completion of the days of separation, until the offering should be presented for each of them. Now, so they've been going from Jerusalem, and everywhere they went and made a circuit, or they traveled. They visited all the different synagogues they were allowed to go, or Ekklesias, and they went to these different places, and they went and participated in teaching the right ruling, and they had a controversy. If I were to go today back to Israel, and I would go with my friends in the northern tribes that follow strictly like the Anishins or the Nazirs, they call Nazarenes, the watchmen of the Torah, of the written word, and I hang out with them, there's still a problem with the controversies of the oral Babylon Torah, the Jerusalem oral Torah, and also the Kabbalists and their Torah of writing orally information, and the ones that follow the Torah of Moshah, what is written in the Word, only in the Word, don't add or take away. Now, is some of it bad? No. Not all is bad. A lot of it's bad. A lot of it's very demonic. A lot of it's got strongholds of all kinds of fairy tales of magic and all kinds of stuff that I don't even want to put in my brain. But is all of it totally bad? No. Some of it, the oral Talmud is okay. Take, for instance, this. When we first started driving cars, they were stop signs. Then they became, and if you're older than 60, you will remember that the only signal lights that existed were red and yellow. That's all. And they were blinking. Okay? They didn't even have stop signs, just red and yellow. Then they went from red, yellow, and green. And then, from one side of the street, became two sides. Then, the lanes become 5 on each side, with an arrow going left, with an arrow going right, and they're all timed and synchronized. And if the street has an extra 5 points instead of 4 points, you're going to sit there 8 minutes before the signal light signals you. So, what rabbis say, that the basic written Torah of Moshe is the blinking red light, or a stop sign. And there's a lot of other information we miss, so we added the extra lights.